Education Campus. I'm Eva Johnson, the Executive Director of the Foundation. I'm also the proud coach of the Free State Cheer and Dance Team, so please join me in thanking our Free State Fireworks and our Ryan, Cup Wings, and Spirit Squad, and the Billboard, Please continue to enjoy your breakfast as we begin the program. I also want to thank the string ensemble from Lawrence High, directed by Mariah Barnett. They were performing for you as you visited the buffet. The Foundation sincerely appreciates that you are starting your day with us as we celebrate your new school year. As a mother of 3, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and one in high school this year, I appreciate that Lawrence is a community that values and supports its public schools. It is certainly my why and my passion and drive to serve through the Foundation and within our community. Your donations, in-kind gifts, and volunteer service through the Lawrence Schools Foundation and the Lawrence Education Achievement Partners last year enabled us to provide more than $1.5 million in direct support for academics, technology, athletics, the arts, and other student and staff needs. In May, the Foundation presented 92 graduating high school seniors with more than $105,000 in scholarships to further their education. We provided educators more than $40,000 in innovative teaching, classroom, and school assistant grants. These grants support them in their work to encourage student achievement and success. Most of our educators are, of course, in their classrooms this morning teaching, but we did invite teachers who received the Foundation grant or award, or who serve as a Foundation Elite liaison to their schools to join us. So would all of our Lawrence Public Schools educators, current or retired, please stand so we may recognize your passion, commitment, and dedication to our students. Now would all district and school administrators and support staff please stand so we may thank you for helping us prepare our students for successful futures. Thank you, administrators, teachers, and staff. I'm blessed to work with an awesome board and a great staff. They're my right and left brain most of the time, so I'd like to thank Foundation staff Jamie Sinclair and Aaron Hoaxel. They're floating around the room somewhere. And acknowledge the school community volunteers serving on the Lawrence Schools Foundation Board of Trustees. With the Foundation Board, please stand and be recognized for your advocacy on behalf of the schools. The work we do through the Foundation would not be possible without each of you, so thank you. It is my pleasure to announce that through your generous sponsorships and attendance here this morning, you have helped the Foundation to raise approximately $54,000 in cash and in-kind gifts to help support high-quality early education for at-risk preschoolers, needs-based and enrichment grants for all of our schools, a recognition program honoring some of our many outstanding educators, and scholarships to encourage our high school seniors to pursue their post-secondary dreams. At this time, I'd like to thank our Community Education Breakfast major sponsors. My sincere appreciation to our friends at Aetna, Hero Zone, and True Credit Union for your generosity and loyalty. Let's give them a hand. As a thank you gift for our major sponsors, our early childhood scholars have created personal artwork masterpieces to thank you for supporting their future. I hope you enjoy those. I also wanted to extend my sincere appreciation to all of our event sponsors today. They're listed in the program. This morning's corporate sponsors are Danco, Capital Federal Foundation, CEK Insurance, City of Lawrence, Commerce Bank, Dance Gallery, Edmunds Duncan, John and Rosie Elmore, First Student, Gold Evans, Hy-Vee, Intrust Bank, Kenseth Athletics, Life Touch, Main Street Credit Union, Marsh McLennan, McCowan Gordon Construction, McDonald's of Lawrence, Midco, Meinshauser, P1 Group, Bill and Cindy Self, U.S. Bank, Gail, Kevin, Vick, and Ward McElwain Mortuary. Please join me in recognizing those amazing people. In addition, I am pleased to acknowledge 14 business and organizations achieving their Master Elite Partner level of support this year. They qualify as Master Partners by donating $10,000 or more to our schools during the past school year through cash gifts to the foundation, in-kind contributions, and many, many hours of volunteer services through their Elite Partnership activities. My heartfelt thanks to Master Partners Basil Leaf Cafe, Quentin's and Jefferson's, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Hy-Vee, the Lawrence Art Center, Leap Center of Kansas, U.S. Bank, the Merck, Boy Scouts of America, Raising Cane's, Salvation Army, Trudy Credit Union, and Walmart. As a small token of our appreciation, you'll find Master Partner Appreciation plaques on your tables. Please help me thank our Master Partners for their generous support of our schools. We have several university, city, county, state officials, and first responders joining us this morning. Thank you for your public service and continued support of our public schools. Our community's gifts, your gifts to the foundation, enable us to support student achievement and success. At last year's event, we revealed a new fund, the I CAN Fund, which is a privately funded program that gives our school social workers and counselors funds to meet the emergency needs of students. The CAN and I CAN stands for Classroom Angel Network. The members of the 2018 Leadership Lawrence class started the I CAN funding program. Trudy Credit Union, Leadership Lawrence, and the Kansas Health Foundation matched that seed money. Thanks to all of you for helping us to create and grow this critical support for our kids. We have a short video to share with you about how those donations have already helped children arrive at school clean, well-rested, fed, confident, and ready to learn.
Kids were coming and getting made fun of. It's just about helping the kids succeed in the classroom.
Research is really showing, and kind of common sense would say, the effects of being in that level of need over and over and over for long term has traumatic effects on a child.
We're having more and more every year of kids feeling hopeless or suicidal.
And so it's really nice to have a fund source that we can possibly access very quickly and go out and get the tennis shoes that they need and have the tennis shoes there maybe later that day or the next day very quickly.
For many of our scholars, the I CAN Fund has definitely been beneficial in terms of removing those barriers that would otherwise impede or impact students' learning.
Something that's small that is distracting to a child, and then they're not learning when they should be.
A lot of people don't know this, but about 40% of our students come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and many of our students come to school with variables that we sometimes may not know about. But what this fund has done and continues to do is remove those barriers so our students and teachers can focus on the academics.
Came to know from them that there was a situation with a family that had young kids that were sleeping on the floor, and as a father of 3 boys myself, young kids, that just hurt my heart to hear, and it was an easy decision. Said, hey, I hate to hear that, and want to put a stop to it. So we put that plan into action, went and got the beds, and actually ended up getting them at Nebraska Furniture Mart, and got them within 2 days, I think, delivered to their house.
With a lot of families, we get rotating, reoccurring concerns that come in about the family, such as dirty clothes, head lice. There's always a period of time during the school year that head lice becomes an issue, and for some families, it's just a really difficult thing to treat if you don't have the kits and the prescription shampoo, for example, and we've been able to talk with schools and access the fund for things like that.
That also helps with our truancy issue with the lice, because kids can't come to school if they have active nits and things like that, and so if we can help them get to the health department or just provide that information and that resources of the kits and the combs and things like that to the families there at the school to just take home with them. That helps with their attendance too.
in any community, even one as well-to-do as Lawrence, for the most part, there's going to be times when people need a hand up. We just believe it's the right thing to do. We believe that that's part of being a part of any community, wherever you live. And the Lawrence community offers the opportunity to, I think, have a real direct connection with a lot of people doing a lot of good things and that spend their time and energy doing that. But we're a distant second to all the people that put a lot of time and effort into making sure that those less fortunate in the community, whether that's permanently or temporarily, are being taken care of, and we just wanted to be a part of that. We want to make sure that that's something that we're known for and that people understand we care about within our operating communities. Giving back to the communities that give to us with our businesses and the retail relationship that is very important to us.
Kids just want to fit in, they want to be integrated into their life.
Think about what you can give up this month or this week that will have a huge and long-lasting impact upon someone else. This is an amazing community, and I know you all rise to the challenge.
I'm thrilled to announce that we achieved our goal last year to raise $10,000 for the ICANN Fund. This year we plan to double it. In deference to our speaker, we are calling this challenge the ICANN Bucket Challenge, but don't worry, no water is required for this one. We are excited to announce that we have started today with a $5,000 donation from matching gifts, once again from our community partners at Trudy Credit Union and the Leadership Lawrence Kansas Health Foundation. At this time, thank you. At this time, we kindly ask that you pass the ICANN buckets for our ICANN Fund. Please donate what you can to support the ICANN Fund and Need program. My thanks to Communications Specialist Rachel Thomas for her work on the video. We don't want basic needs like those shared in video to stand in the way of the student's success in school. Let's continue our celebration by hearing from our superintendent of schools, meeting 4 outstanding seniors and welcoming home a successful Chesapeake alumnus from the class of 1993. It is my honor to introduce our superintendent of schools. We can no longer call Dr. Lewis new. He and his wife Tiffany and their family have made Lawrence their home. Through his listening and learning tours last year, Dr. Lewis spent a good deal of time out and about, getting to know the community. If you have not met him yet, I'm glad that you'll have that opportunity today. Please welcome Superintendent Dr. Anthony Lewis.
Good morning. You can continue to pass the bucket around while I talk. Nothing will stop you there. About a year ago, last year at this breakfast, I stood and spoke to a group about this size. And when I first moved here, I heard that you moved into a great community that truly supports its schools. And when I stood here last year, it was just a true testament to what I had heard about the community and the support for its schools. And then again today, we see that same support. And so I just want to say thank you for what you've done in terms of supporting our schools and what you will continue to do in supporting our schools. I'm super excited to be here with you this morning. There's a lot of great things going on in our district. I want to share a little bit of those things that are going on in our district, and also talk about some of the things that we want to continue to work on in terms of with our partnership with Trudy Credit Union. So excited to be here. I kind of envisioned myself just being in Lawrence for a long time because it's really a great community, and maybe 20 years from now, I'm still here at this breakfast giving a speech again. So 2039, I'll still be here. I still look good. It's a little break on here, but I definitely still want to. Okay, the last stop. What's going on? I look pretty good. Same suit, but it was good. As Dina talked about her board, I also have an amazing board and a not so good clicker. Thank you, Anna. Kind of Stubblefield, ladies and gentlemen. Will our board members please stand? Thank you all so much for the support that you provide, this community support that you provide me and allow me to do the work. We do have a board member that's running for re-election. I can tell people, I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you I enjoy working with Shannon Kimball. So continue to make sure you get out and vote. We do have a couple, I think, of board members or candidates that are running for the board. If you're in the building, please stand. Amazing partnership with the Memorial Hospital with our leadership program, and that's many thanks to Erica Hill. So, I want to, okay. Thank you. But now, let me go back one. But not only I thank you, our amazing scholars, thank you. The impact that you may not see from your donations and your time that you spend with our district, it's truly felt. And when you look at those faces, that's all the more reason why we are continuing to ask for continued support. And so on behalf of myself, our amazing district, and our amazing scholars, we say thank you. Yeah. And so I want to brag a little bit about some of the things that are going on. I dare not tell you every great thing that's going on in this district because we will be here until probably happy hour. So I just want to kind of highlight some of the things that's going on in our district. One, we're excited about our 2 high schools that are in the top 3% of high schools in the entire state. And our high school principals are here. Dr. Johnson and Mr. Goldberg. In addition, we have some amazing scholars. We have a National Blue Ribbon School. That's Hillcrest Elementary School. Free State was recently named Performing Arts School of Excellence Award, or given the Performing Arts School of Excellence Award. That was 1 out of 354 schools in the state. And so that's a state championship for our performing arts. And then numerous state championships, our Free State Speech, Track and Field, LHS Track and Field, LHS Volleyball, Free State Softball, and LHS Swimming and Diving. So not only are we excellent in the classroom, we're also excellent on the field and the track as well. We are super excited about our 4 schools that will be taking part in our Kansas redesign. These are our Apollo schools, and this is where these schools are allowed the opportunity to just be given a blank slate and just redesign the way we do school. And so we have the largest high school in the state, Free State, that's a part of redesign. And so the entire state will be watching Lawrence Public Schools to see what we do with our redesign, definitely at Free State, but also at Broken Arrow, Hillcrest, and Deerfield. So that's super exciting. Super excited about the tremendous growth academically that many of our schools have made from just 1 year. Super excited about the growth that Kennedy has made, almost 7% growth just in 1 year. And of course, Flagler, Broken Arrow, Langston, Music, Portland all made tremendous growth in terms of their state assessments in English language arts. Also in math, similar schools, Kennedy again, almost 7%, Broken Arrow, Free State, Langston Hughes, and Woodlawn. And so super excited about the academic growth that's taking place in our buildings. So where do we go from here? We engage this community in a process to gather data and collect feedback and input on our 5-year strategic plan. And you have a copy of those plans on your table. We were really intentional about not having a thick strategic plan that probably we couldn't do anything. And I've been a part of organizations that engage in similar activities, but the product was a 3-ring binder or a huge 367-page document that didn't get done. So we're excited that our strategic plan can fit inside of your pocket, and you have a copy of it on your table, so we definitely want you to take a look at that. And our promise is simply this. The promise to the community is that we will ensure that all students of all races, backgrounds, abilities achieve at high levels, demonstrate proficiency in reading by the 3rd grade. We know what the research says around reading in 3rd grade, reading by 3rd grade, and in math by 8th grade, and graduate on time, prepared for success in college and careers. And so we have 5 themes, and they're in your on your table in our strategic plan: cohesive curriculum, student-centered learning, safe and supportive schools, effective employees, and data-informed decisions. So I want to thank you for giving us this input to craft this strategic plan. And so these are the 5 things, the 5 simple things that we're going to work on these next 5 years. So it's super exciting that we are just focusing on just a few things, and we're going to get good at those. We cannot do the work without the partnership of our Lawrence School Foundation. It has been a tremendous asset to the work that we've done and the work that we continue to do. And so this is a true definition in every sense of the word of a true partnership. And so one of the things that we've done and the foundation has allowed us to do is to invest in our building leaders. Would all of our building leaders, administrators, principals, vice principals, please stand? Thank you all. I want to say thank you to all our building leaders. Leadership is a lonely job. It's a lonely position. But these leaders have come in. You can go back one more. These leaders have come in and really dug in and continue to do what's best for their buildings. And I think Arnie Duncan said it best. There are no good schools without good principals. It just doesn't exist. And where there are good principals, great teachers come, and they stay, and they work hard, and they grow. And so the foundation has allowed us to invest in our principals through the way of professional development. And on the next slide, you will see some of the comments. We had a 2-day institute this summer where we brought in a national speaker and just spent 2 days of just quality professional development. And on the screen are just some comments from some of our principals in relation to those 2-day institute. One is this professional development I have been a part. This is the best professional development I've been a part of in all of my years in Lawrence. So we're really doing some amazing things in terms of really investing in our leaders so they can continue to do the work. Jayhawk Blueprint, we're all my KU alumni. We are so excited about our continued partnership and expanded partnership with KU. In our high schools, I think for the past 4 or 5 years, we've offered Math 101 and English 101. This year, we began to expand that partnership and offer, I think, 13 additional courses. And so our high school students can really essentially leave us, of course, with a high school diploma, but potentially maybe 1 year of college under their belt, and it's just a third of what it would normally cost. And so we're talking about really impacting student loan and that debt that many of our scholars face upon graduating college. But these classes are offered in our buildings and at a third of the cost. And so what we did not want to create is an opportunity basically for those families and students that could afford this opportunity, and we didn't want to create a barrier for those families that wanted to take part in this but maybe didn't have the financial means. And so through our amazing partnership with our Truity Credit Union and our Schools Foundation, they have allocated some funds to set aside for scholarships for many of our students to take advantage of. And so that's super exciting. We're really impacting, yes, we're really impacting and creating opportunities for first-gen college students and those students who otherwise may not think that college is in reach, and definitely may not think that they can attend KU, but to be in a high school in a KU class, they begin to say, yes, I can do this, I can go to college. And so we're really excited about that. But we can always do more. And one of the things that we want to do, a couple of things that we want to do, is continue to focus on our work around equity and making sure that we're removing any barriers to students. And this work is hard. Many of you have seen probably the depiction of what equity is through the cartoon. Some individuals standing outside a fence and some of them on boxes. I see some of you have seen that. And so what we want to do is provide those additional boxes to some of our scholars and some of our schools. One of the ways we want to do that is working with equal opportunity schools. And the foundation has agreed to partner with us and fund this. And so we partnered with them to get some initial assessment data on some of our students. So basically what our equal opportunity schools do is help us identify those students who are not currently enrolled in AP classes, but would be successful if they were enrolled in AP classes. And many of the students are enrolled in AP classes due to maybe teacher referral. But what Equal Opportunity Schools does is help us identify those students that may not be identified by teachers but could be successful. And so this is Lawrence High's preliminary data where we've identified 85 underrepresented students that are currently not in AP classes but would be successful if they were in there. And we know what the research says around students that are just in AP classes and exposed to the rigor of AP classes. The research says that a student that earns maybe a grade of a C in an AP class is much more beneficial than a student who earns an A maybe in a non-AP class. And so this is really changing the game in terms of increasing the number of students that are in those AP classes. And then the same for Free State on the next slide. We identified 81 students that are currently not in AP classes but otherwise will be successful. This is the true essence of our equity work, and we're excited that the foundation is partnering with us on that. This is new this year. I have this vision, and so I need each and every one of you to be a part of this, making this vision come to fruition. What I want to do, and what we want to do as a district, is ensure that every single student in this district has a mentor. Tons of research around the impact of mentors. Whether you come from a single parent home, we have both parents in the home. There's still research that supports that third person or that second person in a child's life has a major impact. And so we want to partner with Teammates, which is a mentoring program that does background checks for our mentors and assigns mentors and help us recruit mentors to ensure that close to 12,000 students in our district has that one-on-one mentor. And the only ask for you is just to sign up to be a mentor and maybe give us 1 to 2 days a week just to meet with that mentor during lunch, maybe in class, just to know, just to have a conversation. We know many of you come to our schools and read stories to our students, but just coming to have a conversation. And the research is clear on the power of the mentor. 91% of mentees reported higher levels of hope as a result of having a mentor. And some of the research suggests that many students that have a mentor are less likely to be depressed. And as we as a community come together to address the high number of students in families, definitely the students that have suicidal thoughts, think about that and the power that a mentor would have on that. And so that's the ask, that we continue to partner with our teammates, but most importantly, we want to get you to definitely sign up or volunteer to be a mentor. And now, for our 2019 Student Champions. At the heart of Lawrence Public Schools, there are about 11,858 students. Everything that we do is done with the best interest of our students in mind. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce you to 4 outstanding seniors selected by their high schools for recognition as the Lawrence Schools Foundation Student Champions. Let me put that in perspective for you. There are 4 students chosen from about 3,300 high school scholars here in Lawrence to be honored for their accomplishments in and outside of the classroom. With this year's Lawrence Schools Foundation Student Champions, please join me on stage. It's my privilege and honor to introduce Lawrence High School seniors Samantha Turner, Trevor Arellano, and Free State High School seniors Caitlin Hamilton, and David Stewart. Good morning, seniors. Don't worry about missing class. I think you have a pretty good valid excuse to miss your morning class, because you all know you're here for a good reason. To represent your peers, to represent your teachers, to represent your prospective schools, and most importantly, to represent this amazing district. No pressure at all, right? You represent them well, and we're super excited that you're here with us this morning. And so after I introduce each one of these outstanding and amazing students, I will present them with a medal that I'm hoping that's under this podium from the Lawrence Schools Foundation, and a piece of artwork by our early childhood preschoolers. He steps back to check. Yes, they're there. Let's begin with our Lawrence High Scholars and Miss Sammy Turner. Sammy Turner? Ready? Didn't move. Still with me. We talked to our high school faculty to learn more about our scholars. And we learned that Sammy is an outgoing and truly wants to help others in all situations. Her teachers say that she has a great heart and that other students look up to her for it. They add that Sammy is mature beyond her years and able to navigate conversations with adults better than, well, some adults themselves. Sammy is immensely creative. She proves that with her outstanding work in many national honors in journalism. She's editor-in-chief of the student newspaper, The Budget, which is an award-winning budget, and I think many of us get our news from The Budget. I think the Lawrence Journal World gets their news from The Budget. Whenever I want to know something going on, I always check the Budget. If you haven't been interviewed by any of the reporters from The Budget, it's intense. It really is. She's co-student body president and chair of the Kansas High School Democrats. Sammy also works for SAFER, a student organization formed to advocate for gun safety in light of school shootings across the country. One of her teachers says that Sammy is a passionate advocate for social justice and for equal treatment of all. As a Link Crew leader, Sammy is doing an amazing job in welcoming the presence of dozens of freshmen that come in on the first day. In fact, as a junior Link leader, she worked one-on-one with a student on orientation day when a student who was reluctant to come to school, but due in part to Sammy's nurturing demeanor and her caring demeanor, the student has now found a home at Lawrence High. Thank you so much, Sammy, for that. The teacher shares that Sammy's brilliance has been demonstrated time and time again through her exemplary academic records. Most recently by placing in the top 10 in the nation at the History Day competition with a group website created with Trevor. About Montrose Raid. Their group won the National Civil War Trust Prize and a $1,000 cash prize. My new best friends. This award-winning website of theirs was featured in August as part of a local Civil War on the Western Frontier events coordinated at the Watkins Museum of History and Freedom Frontier National Heritage Site. When she's not in school, one of the things that she does, you may find Sammy working at Slim's Chickens. She also does freelance graphic design work and lent those talents to the focus groups that were involved in helping the district select this new logo. So thank you for your work on that committee as well. And her counselor adds this, that Sammy is kind, funny, and empathetic. She says that it is an honor to have Sammy Turner represent LHS. Thank you, Sammy, for demonstrating the heart of a lion. I'm proud to recognize you this morning as one of our student champions and excited to see what comes next for you during your senior year and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Sammy Turner. I bet it feels kind of weird just standing here and just having someone talk about you, right? But you deserve it. Next, I would like you to meet Trevor Arellano. Help me, Trevor. Arellano, thank you. Faculty tell us that Trevor is a true asset to LHS. He is involved with the marching band, student council, Link Crew, Young Democrats Club, and cross country. And he serves in a leadership role in all of these activities. Trevor kind of works, do you work for Sandy? Since you are a reporter, one of those intense reporters, he's a reporter, photographer, and a designer on the staff of the award-winning Budget. As with all great student athletes, Trevor's academics comes first. And as I mentioned, he and Sammy were part of the group that earned the top honors out of thousands, thousands of entries at the National History Day for their Silver Award website project. Trevor Counselor says this, that he has a heart of gold and is often seen helping his peers and always with a smile on his face. Yeah, this is true. One of his teachers has noticed that Trevor frequently wears yellow. Not today, though. A color that she says matches his bright personality and approach to leadership. Can someone give me the mic? I want people to hear these amazing colors.
There's one right there.
There's one right there. Right over here. Okay, either one. Testing. Awesome. Thank you, Trevor. He's also great at microphones. He's a friend to all, never hesitating to include others. He's a stellar student and leader, unafraid to challenge himself with difficult courses and demanding leadership roles. Trevor has a passion for service and the earth. He worked with the Lawrence Public Schools Farm to School Garden Program for years, and last summer worked at Pendleton's County Market as the Pendletons recovered from damage as a result of the May tornado. That's amazing, Trevor. Trevor's counselor said that his positivity is infectious and proves that it is always a great day to be a Chesty Lion. I'm honored to recognize your leadership and success this morning, Trevor, and anxious to see where it takes you in the future. Super excited about what you're going to do at Lawrence High, Trevor. Ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Arellano. Now let's meet our Free State High School student champions, beginning with Miss Caitlin Hamilton. Caitlin is a senior member of the Lady Firebirds volleyball team, link crew, and the student athletic leadership team, which is called the SALT of the Firebirds. This group gathers on a monthly basis to focus on character development, build student leadership capacity, and to give back to the community. The SALT of the Firebirds will host the Sunflower League Student Athlete Leadership Summit next month, and so I don't have to repeat all of this good stuff twice, I will mention now that David is also a member of the SALT of Firebirds. Outside of school, Caitlin has been a 3-year volunteer at Lawrence Memorial Hospital and supports Douglas County Special Olympics. She has provided tours at Free State parents during school open house and at parent nights. Her teachers say that they are most proud of Caitlin's drive to be the best leader she can be. This past summer, Caitlin attended the National Federation of High School Activities Student Leadership Summit in Indianapolis. Not only was she was the only student attendee from Free State, but she was the first student to represent the state of Kansas at the summit, so a true trailblazer. Caitlin's commitments to learning, growing, and setting an example of excellence for her peers is super impressive. She has committed to playing volleyball next year at Indiana State University. Go Sycamores. She plans to major in nursing. We have school nurses in the district if you ever want to come back. We'll be rooting for your continued success at Indiana State University, Caitlin. Thank you for your leadership at Free State. I am pleased to recognize you today as one of our student champions. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Caitlin Hamilton. Finally, let's meet Mr. David Stewart. David also is an excellent representative of students throughout Lawrence Public Schools. He excels in the classroom because he is devoted to his studies and prioritizes his time and efforts towards rising to the rigor of all of his classes. David's teachers say that they can count on him to lead in the classroom, perform at a high level, and serve as a role model for other students. Outside of the classroom, David embodies all of the desired traits of a successful student athlete. He has excelled in multiple events in swimming and in baseball. He is an all-league performer and future college baseball player. What college? But you play baseball wherever you go. I've seen you play. His coaches, like his teachers, have learned to trust his efforts and rely upon his leadership. They say David possesses a strong work ethic which drives him to many, many hours beyond what is expected of him, working to better himself and his teammates. To add that, David has a great sense of humor. That's what they say. Shows compassion toward others and is driven to always do the right thing. In addition to being a student athlete, David is a Firebird fan. He attends nearly every event, both at home and away. I'm laughing because I'm remembering an image of David on the coldest day of the year. I think it was remember that, Caitlin? The coldest day was a tournament, a playoff game, right? And just like he didn't have this shirt on. I'm told that one can always hear him cheering for other Free State athletes and sometimes cheering a little rambunctiously. I'm grateful to meet you, David, and see you again, and see you with your shirt on. It is my honor to recognize you this morning as one of our student champions. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Hamilton. David Stewart. It says I'm supposed to ask for another round of applause, so. And these amazing student champions cannot do the work that they do at school every day alone. With their amazing families, please stand. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing scholars with us. We're super excited to partner with them, and thank you so much for your support and supporting the work that they do. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2019 student champions. Let's welcome Dina Johnson back to the stage.
I'm fortunate to work alongside Dr. Lewis on behalf of the outstanding students, like the 4 seniors we just met. Thank you for helping us make a positive difference for our students. It's now time for the main event, so to introduce our speaker, please welcome the President of the Foundation Board of Trustees, Mr. Tim Mock.
Well, good morning, and thank you to everyone for coming out this morning. We really appreciate all the support that you have given us. Today, it's my honor to represent Truity Credit Union and to work with the Foundation, LEAP, the Lawrence Public Schools to build a stronger community and a brighter future, one student at a time. Some of you may not have had the opportunity yet to meet Brian Frederick, but many of you who have spent time cheering for our beloved Jayhawks know of his parents, his mother Margie, and his father, the late Dr. Bob Frederick. He served as KU's athletic director for 14 years, which is longer than any other AD outside of Fog Allen. Perhaps you were one of the millions of people who dumped a bucket of ice water over your head as a part of the social media fundraising campaign that went viral back in 2014, called the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Brian, the Executive Vice President of Communications at the ALS Association, consulted with that organization on crisis and strategic communications during the wildly successful fundraising campaign. So please welcome home an LHS graduate, Brian Frederick.
thank you guys very much for being here. It's a real honor. So if we could throw up the first photo. This is Charlie. Charlie just started kindergarten. Just a little bit higher here. How's that? It's a little daunting coming back to your home. So just this week, he wrote his very first book, which is about dinosaurs. And when I asked Charlie about what I should speak about when I flew back here, he of course said dinosaurs. So now I'm learning all about dinosaurs, and if you take nothing else away from this speech, I want you to remember this, that birds are dinosaurs. You may not realize it, you might have heard it, but common scientific knowledge now says that birds evolved from dinosaurs. So when we were kids, we imagined, T-Rex and Stegosaurus fighting with Triceratops, but now we know that over millions and millions and millions of years, those things that we see outside our office window and those things we see out on the street are actually dinosaurs. And in fact, there are now more dinosaurs, there are more birds species than there ever were dinosaurs. So, in fact, dinosaurs are thriving today, which is something you should think about the next time you have a chicken sandwich. If we can throw up the next photo. So these are the things you learn about when you go through that second education of having children, which many of you have. I'm still trying to help Charlie understand that birds are dinosaurs, much to the chagrin of my wife, who thinks I'm just confusing him. But in honor of Charlie and Jack and my lovely wife Carolyn, who couldn't be here, as much as I hoped they would be, I at least had to mention dinosaurs today. I'd like to thank Tim, thank Dina, and thank the entire Lawrence Schools Foundation, including Susan Henderson, who's going to be here, for inviting me here. Thank you to all my wonderful friends and family who came out, and thank you to my former colleagues. I'm going to take this off here. I say colleagues because many of you may not know that many, many years ago, I taught at Lawrence High School. I'm one of the few who went through Lawrence High School and then taught at Lawrence High School. And probably even fewer can say that they were the child of a teacher at Lawrence High School who then went on to teach at Lawrence High School. I am fortunate to be the son of two educators. My mother was a special education teacher in the Lawrence schools, and obviously and later worked for the university. And my father was a high school teacher and coach. You know him as Dr. Bob from KU, but he was many times served as a high school teacher and coach, including at Lawrence High School. So I have fond memories of going to Lawrence High School and hanging out with his boys basketball team when I was just a toddler. And they certainly seemed like giants. And then I also like going back to his chemistry classroom where he had a snake that he had inherited, a giant snake. I bet many of you never would have pegged my dad as a chemistry teacher, but he was. So I followed my parents down the educational path, while my brother Brad followed my dad down the coaching path. Brad was always more interested in the X's and O's of basketball and the fundamentals. This was most obvious on cold winter days when my dad would go up to Allen Fieldhouse and open up the gym. It was empty, and my brother and I could go down and play on the court there. And Brad would be over in the corner shooting layups and practicing free throws, and I would be at the other goal at half court, launching half court shots over and over and over, running into the stands and getting the ball. So I got pretty good. I still have yet to be picked for any half-court shooting shots contests. But Brad made basketball his life, winning the state title with the Lawrence Lions in 1995. And he went on to play 2 Final Fours at UNC, and finally won a national championship at UNC as an assistant just a couple years ago. So I couldn't be prouder of him. He's devoted his life to the very intersection of education and sports that was so important to my father. and by extension, my mother, whether she liked it or not, and now Jocelyn, Brad's wife, as well. I was always more interested in watching my dad work behind the scenes, working with his staff, working with the media, working with student athletes, working with the chancellor. And I was always fascinated how he operated with such integrity and compassion, with education as his North Star. While others were really concerned about wins and revenue, he was concerned about education. But he taught me mostly through his own example to treat the chancellor the same way that you treat the janitors. And I've always done that. I've always tried to do that anyway. And he, of course, taught me about the importance of public service. It's something that many of you in this room value. Bob Dylan once said that you're going to have to serve somebody. And who better to serve, who more noble to serve than our nation's youth, whether at kindergarten or college. So thank you to all of you who have chosen to serve and help educate. So virtually all my life I've been a student or a teacher or both. After my time teaching at Lawrence High School, I returned to my grad school and got my PhD, following the footsteps of Dr. Bob. Before getting into politics, before and after the 2008 election, I worked nearly 12 hours a day, 7 days a week on the front lines of the political fights in Washington, something I do not miss at all. And then someone asked me if I wanted to run the first political group for sports fans. And given my background, I jumped at the chance to give fans a voice in Washington. It was very interesting work. My biggest win was going up against Roger Goodell, the commissioner of NFL, literally against him at the FCC over the issue of television blackouts, and we defeated him 5-0 at the FCC. So that's why there's no more television blackouts. Not that the Chiefs would ever have blackouts. Fan base here. It was during this time that I started teaching at Georgetown Sports Industry Management Program, which I'm still doing nearly 10 years later. I see my job as helping aspiring sports executives to see that sports is not quite as glamorous as it seems on TV, but it's actually a business. I think they should at least go into the sports business with a critical eye. Professional sports is a glorified real estate scam, I tell them. But I do love teaching and working with my students at Georgetown. Tired of fundraising for my own paycheck, I decided to join a public relations firm in Washington for a couple of years, and it was during that time that in the summer of 2014, I received a phone call about this crazy thing happening called the Ice Bucket Challenge. Little did I know that would define the next 5 years of my life. So in just a few weeks, the ALS Association was raising tens of millions of dollars. They ultimately ended up raising $115 million in 6 weeks. So what they were, at the time, they were deluged by media requests for offers to help, hundreds of requests a day they were getting, and these are top tier outlets and outlets around the world. And at the time, they had no CFO. At the time, the CEO had only been in place for a couple months, and the chief communication officer was 8 months pregnant and just about to go on 4 months of maternity leave. So here they were at this most critical juncture in the history of ALS, and the leadership was largely in need of help. So that's when I came to help. So I became full-time immersed with the organization, helping to try and make a sense of this historic event that really changed the trajectory of ALS forever. For those who don't know, here's your quick lesson. ALS is a neurodegenerative disease that affects your motor neurons, and then your muscles, you lose the ability to use your muscles. And so what this means is that you become a prisoner trapped in your own body. Your mind is working just fine, usually, but you can't lift any muscles. Eventually you can't eat, you can't breathe. It's a really horrible disease, so people that become in that state often have to use their eyes to communicate, looking at eye gazers. And people that have been in that position, I've seen create some of the most inspiring works and do some of the most inspiring work just by using their eyes to help educate. So not only does the person who has ALS lose their job because they can't work, obviously, then their loved one typically has to quit their job because it requires full-time care. So now the family is out 2 salaries, and then of course there's the high cost of care itself. And so it's really a disease that leads to bankruptcy and divorce. It's just a horrible disease. And so it was during these days at during the Ice Bucket Challenge that I met Pat Quinn. And Pat Quinn's a young man with ALS from Yonkers, New York, who had helped found the challenge. And Pat literally has changed my life. He gave me one of his bracelets here that I literally have not taken off in 5 years since the day I met him. He's I knew that the first time we shared beers, back when he could still drink a beer, and talk UNC basketball because he was a big Tar Heel fan, that I wanted to help him. And it was completely unfair what had happened to him as to so many others. So I joined the association full-time, quit my PR firm, and wanted to make this my work. So Pat is great because Pat is so open about what is so difficult about this disease. And if anybody in the room has been affected by ALS, I'm here for you. My heart goes out to you, and I certainly welcome a conversation later. So I text with Pat almost every day. He uses his eye gazer. We chat on Facebook all the time, usually about UNC hoops. Still love my Jayhawks, don't worry. But for those of you wondering, yes, family comes first, so it's always going to be the Tar Heels where Brad is, or if it's Vanderbilt where he was before, it'll be Vanderbilt. Pat has become such an inspiring, motivational speaker because he's willing to give of himself and educate. But the challenge was then he lost his voice, and this was obviously devastating for Pat because how does an inspirational, motivational speaker, oh, there's my family. Didn't mean for them to stay up so long, but they'll be thrilled. I thought it was funny when I walked in and we were doing the national anthem and Charlie's picture was up, so like everybody was saluting Charlie there. This was devastating for Pat to lose his voice, so I started working with a couple of guys in Australia, and we decided to try and give Pat his voice back. And the problem was he hadn't voice banked his voice. He hadn't recorded hours and hours of recording so that they could rebuild his voice. So we had to take all these old Ice Bucket Challenge interviews, which were of various lengths and various qualities of background noise, and we really winnowed it down to about 2 hours of usable audio. And then we worked with a firm out of Canada's upstart tech kids who are 22 and smarter than me, who created Pat's voice using this technology. And so then we came back to Yonkers and had Pat get his family, and we presented it to Pat with his family. So this is a video about that, if we could roll the video. This campaign,
What happened last summer was a start.
yeah. So I think you can handle that one again.
The end of ALS.
There we go. So this campaign raised ALS awareness worldwide. It went on to win virtually every top advertising award in the world. And I say that only so you get a sense of the impact that one person, Pat Quinn, can have on the world. One person. And his story really resonated with the entire world. So one year for Christmas, my father gave my brothers and I each a poem that he had printed up and put into a Target wood 8x10 frame. And he said he was making a donation to our name to the Josephson Institute of Ethics. At the time, we were old enough that it wasn't that big a disappointment to get a poem and a donation for Christmas. But it was certainly heartfelt, and the intent of the poem was apparent upon first reading, but it's something that has really become even more meaningful as the years have gone on. We actually printed it up on his funeral program 10 years ago when he passed, and spoke at the funeral about the impact that he had had and how that poem had defined him. So I'd like to share it with you now, and the Schools Foundation was kind enough to print these up and put them on your table, so if you haven't seen them, that's where it is, so you can take it if you like. And the poem's called What Will Matter by Michael Josephson. Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no minutes, hours, or days. All the things you collected, whether treasured or forgotten, will pass to someone else. Your wealth, fame, and temporal power will shrivel to irrelevance. It will not matter what you owned or what you were owed. Your grudges, resentments, frustrations, jealousies will finally disappear. So too your hopes, ambitions, plans, and to-do lists will expire. The wins and losses that once seemed so important will fade away. It won't matter where you came from or what side of the tracks you lived on at the end. It won't matter whether you were beautiful or brilliant. Even your gender and skin color will be irrelevant. So what will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your success, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, and encouraged others to emulate your example. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many will feel a lasting loss when you're gone. What will matter is not your memories, but the memories of those who loved you. What will matter is how long you will be remembered, by whom, and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. That's good point. And so now I think about those people in society who are living a life that matters. Pat Quinn is living a life that matters. He is given the worst possible diagnosis that there is, and he's used that fight to inspire others to care, and is literally to change the trajectory of ALS so future generations will hopefully no longer have to deal with this terrible disease. In fact, the Ice Bucket Challenge was so successful that it inspired Facebook to create the online donation tools that now exist on Facebook that now enable you, mostly you've probably done this by setting up a birthday fundraiser for your favorite charity. Well, they don't take any money from that, and just yesterday or this week they announced that they've raised $2 billion for all causes worldwide, and they directly attribute the Ice Bucket Challenge as being the reason that they created this. I can only imagine where the Ice Bucket Challenge, if those donation tools had been there at the time, what those would have done. But it's really a testament to the importance of this Ice Bucket Challenge for all causes and giving. So Pat is living a life that matters. The student champions that we met earlier are really living a life that matters. Sammy, Trevor, Caitlin, David. How amazing are these guys, right? Absolutely. My father and mother have lived lives that matter, and I thank them for all that they've provided for me and my brothers, especially the love of learning, teaching, and public service. As I think back on my days in Lawrence and the people who mattered most to me, they were educators and people who were committed to the community. I bet most of you, if I asked you who mattered to you in your life, would think back to teachers and educators and leaders in your community. I'm so deeply grateful for all the amazing teachers and educators that I had in Lawrence Public Schools, first at Deerfield, and then at West Junior High School, and finally at Lawrence High School, and even Stomach from KU, who helped me as well. So I sincerely thank them all. There are too many for me to name, and I would feel bad about leaving a few behind. But I sincerely thank them, especially those who are here today. I'm now raising a family in Washington, D.C. You've seen Charlie and my family here. And Charlie just started kindergarten at a public school in the city, and I can't think how different his experience is. He doesn't ride a bike to school, he doesn't roll hedge apples down Campfire Drive. He doesn't wait for the bookmobile to come so he can have new books. And he certainly doesn't get into fights with tomatoes from Mary Loveland's garden. And yet at the same time, his experience is so similar. His school is made of a committed and skilled set of teachers and educators and a wonderful group of kids and parents. My peers who grew up in Lawrence schools have gone on to do some amazing things. My best friend is a Green Beret. Some are in leadership roles at huge organizations. Some are musicians. Some are teachers themselves. One, Jessica Beeson, even became president of the school board. Never missed on that kind of so proud of you. We all are so fortunate to have this school system. There's a quote from the audio industry legend Lee Iacocca, who recently just passed away, that I've said incorrectly so many times over the years that I've actually just come to prefer my own version. And the gist of it is this, that in a perfectly rational society, teachers would be the most highly paid individuals, because the transmission of our culture from one generation to the next is the most important work that there is. The work that the educators and the teachers in this room and the administrators are doing is literally the most important work that's happening in Lawrence. The Lawrence Schools Foundation is doing invaluable work by supporting all of these teachers and administrators and educators. And by supporting the Lawrence Schools Foundation, each of you is helping to improve, enrich, and ultimately educate this community. So thank you all for coming, because you are, in fact, helping to educate and enrich this community. I'd like to, yes, give it up for yourselves. By the way, I was just doing some quick back of the napkin math here at my table, and this I Can program to provide essential services for kids who may not have a meal to eat or shoes to wear so that they can get to school. If a counselor or a teacher sees this person could really use an extra lift, this I Can program seems amazing. And they said they've already raised $5,000 towards the $20,000, and if the 600 people in here kicked in an extra $20 each for this program, we would raise an additional $12,000 towards this program. So I strongly encourage you to give to the I Can network, the I Can program. So I'd like to close with a thought. A few thoughts. First, birds are dinosaurs. Second, ALS is a terrible disease and we desperately need a cure, so if you're willing to support, we would love any support at the ALS Association. And finally, John Dewey once said that education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. So whether you are reading to your kids, or taking night school, or volunteering, or driving the school bus, or serving in the school lunch cafeteria, or you're just here helping to support local schools, if you are committed to education, you are living. And if you are doing that to service, in the service of others in the community, you are living a life that matters. Thank you all.
I'm Marty Moore from the foundation, and I'd like to remind you that on your tables are buckets for the challenge. So get your cash out and pony up, and maybe we can hit that $12,000. Actually, Tim and I are here with microphones, and we're here to have Brian answer any of your questions. So if anyone has a question, we'll get the microphone to you. And I'd like to start off by, Brian, I'm in the real estate business, and I'd like to know about this professional football and real estate scam.
Has outlived its life, real estate owners decide that they, professional sports team owners decide that they would like a new stadium, and then they put that on the backs of the local taxpayers, and all the revenue comes through the stadium to the owners. Of course, that's my progressive, democratic, liberal bent. But actually, if you put these up to voter polls, conservatives and Republicans agree. In fact, I had breakfast with Grover Norquist once, the famous anti-tax champion, and he was 100% in agreement with us. And the Goldwater Institute, they were all in agreement that this was not a good use of taxpayer dollars. So there you go.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I think for the sake of time, we're going to take one more, but I'm sure Brian's going to be here for a little while. You want to chat with him after?
Okay, we got one over here. For you.
I have an ice bucket challenge question. You said that it raised 100 or 150 million. Can you tell us a little bit about how that money has been put to use for research for ALS?
Great question. Yeah, it was $115 million, which was in 6 weeks, and there was a period there where over 8 days we were raising $10 million a day. And so the story itself became how much money we were raising, which in turn generated more publicity. It's a great question. The vast majority of that money has been spent or committed on research. About $95 million has been spent on research to date. Because there's, at the ALS Association, we have a three-pronged mission: research, care services, so people that are actually living with the disease and need support, and then advocacy, which is to try and generate better policies and regulations in Washington, but actually also to generate more funding. So we just got, in the latest House Appropriations bill, $10 million to $20 million at the DoD to spend on research, because the federal government and the NIH can obviously spend way more money on ALS research than we can ever raise. So we put it all towards our primary mission, and we've seen some great advances. There certainly hasn't been the big breakthrough we hoped 4 or 5 years ago that would lead to a cure, but this is a very complex disease, and I think we've moved up decades in just the last 5 years. So we're certainly getting closer, and I think we're almost there towards at least a life-extending treatment so that people can live with ALS for a longer time. But great question, thanks.
Everybody, please welcome Brian back to Lawrence. Thank you so much for being here. And for you, a bucket full of Lawrence stuff. And you too got a really cool piece of artwork created by our early childhood kids. It got some like ice.
It's ice water on it.
Oh yeah,
this is great.
Awesome.
Yeah, no,
Brian,
thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Could I mention one more thing? Thank you, Rhonda. By the way, the bucket is full of a Lawrence High School hat, amazing. And then lots of Free State beer, which I am obviously a huge fan of Free State. It's so great they named a high school after Free State. I kid, you do have the best mascot, because what kind of a bird is a firebird, but it's obviously a kick-ass dinosaur or whatever it is. Certainly probably stronger than the Chesky Lions, which apparently Chesky has not taken off with any other mascot in America ever. But my mom did want me to mention that we put Pat Quinn up in an ad with Terry Bradshaw, so I got to go up to New York and hang out with Terry Bradshaw for the day, and he's exactly like you expect Terry Bradshaw to be. I constantly had to say, because he was, she was talking with all the crew, and I constantly had to say, Terry, we got to shoot this, come on, like I need you to pull it back. But so you may have seen the ad with Pat Quinn and Terry Bradshaw, because she calls me at least a couple of times a week and says, I saw the ad with Pat Quinn and Terry Bradshaw, so keep an eye out for that, because it's out there. But This meant a lot, so thank you guys very much for this warm reception, and please give to Lawrence Schools Foundation because it's really an amazing cause and an important work they're doing. Thanks again.
Thank you, Brian. We're very, very fortunate. It's amazing to see so many fantastic alumni come out of the Lawrence community that come back and share that with the community. So thank you. As is our tradition, we'd like to end this morning with a special performance by one of our Lawrence Public Schools students. In 2016, with the creativity and vision from a then LHS junior, Graham Edmonds, the Lawrence Schools Foundation and the Lead Center Kansas were proud to announce Ovation, their very first district-wide talent show. Now in its 4th year, middle and high school students in the district have the opportunity to audition and then present a range of talents from aerial arts to playing musical instruments and singing on the main stage of the Lead Center with full production. As we gear up for this year's event, which will be held on Sunday, February 9th, we wanted to give you a sneak peek into the show and share that talent with you today. We are thrilled to have one of our students here performing this morning. She's going to perform an original piece. Please join me in welcoming Lawrence High School student and 3-time Ovation performer, Camilla Lynch.
Thank you, Camilla. That was wonderful. And thank you all for spending your morning here with the Lawrence Schools Foundation and celebrating what a community can accomplish when it stands behind some of the finest teachers in the country that support the success of some of the most amazing students in the world. Our students receive an excellent education in Lawrence Public Schools, and thanks to your support and generosity, including your contributions to the Lawrence Schools Foundation and your partnership with LEAP, we make this possible. It's true, everybody benefits from great public schools. Have a fantastic day.